Good morning and welcome to Breakfast with Chris Mason and Sally Nugent.
Our headlines today. The Denmark player Christian Eriksen is in a stable condition in hospital after needing life-saving heart treatment during a match in the European Championships.
News of Eriksen's improved condition, a huge relief to players and fans alike. Tournament organisers confirming the action will continue. England kick off their campaign against Croatia here at Wembley later this afternoon.
Ahead of a decision about lifting coronavirus restrictions in England, the Prime Minister urges caution with a possible delay of up to 4 weeks.
The President who came to tea. The Queen will welcome Joe Biden to Windsor this afternoon.
Sold $28 million to number 107.
A mystery bidder pays £20 million to fly into space with the boss of Amazon.
And over the next few days, we're set to see some of the hottest conditions of the year so far, but it won't be sunshine and heat for all. I'll give you all the details here on Breakfast.
Just gone 6 o'clock, morning to you. It is Sunday the 13th of June. Our top story, the Denmark midfielder Christian Eriksen is now said to be in a stable condition in hospital after collapsing during the Euro 2020 match against Finland last night.
The former Spurs player received life-saving treatment on the pitch after he fell to the ground. The game was suspended just before half-time, but was later resumed, as Paddy Geary reports.
Admired across football, and when medics rushed to him at the end of the first half, there was horror in the stadium in wider Copenhagen and around the world. The referee, Englishman Anthony Taylor, suspended the match, and both sets of fans sung out Eriksen's name. In support, in hope. Then eventually the stadium announcer gave them the news that they'd prayed for. Eriksen was stable.
I don't care if we're going to win or lose. Christian Eriksen is awake. That's absolutely the best. And I hope the best for him and his family.
Lots of people around us were just crying, really, crying literally. Crying for 15, 20 minutes, and then we found out that through the Finnish guys, we were standing next to the Finnish guys actually. So we got pictures from the Finnish guys showing that he was actually sitting upright and he was holding his own mask and with oxygen, and it was a relief for everybody.
Also watching on television was Fabrice Muamba, who himself so nearly died on the pitch while playing for Bolton against Spurs 9 years ago.
I'm watching it from home. I'm literally in tears. I'm saying, come on, man, seriously, come on, come on. And this incident has also shown how important to have a good medical care available to you could help somebody to survive a sudden cardiac arrest.
The resumed match was, unsurprisingly, subdued. It finished 1-0 to Finland, but in a tournament delayed by a pandemic, yet another reminder that this is just a game. Patrick Geary, BBC News.
Just a little earlier, we heard from Peter Peel, a football commentator in Denmark, who told us about the reaction there.
It was terrible, and people were in a state of despair. They didn't believe their eyes. It was surreal. That was some of the words that came out of their mouths. I was watching together with a group of friends, and people were crying. We had to comfort each other, and very, very worried. Of course, I've been covering the Danish national team for quite some time, and all through Christian Eriksen's career doing Premier League. I've talked to him numerous times, and my legs started to shake.
Well, let's speak now to our reporter Adrienne Murray, who is outside the hospital in Copenhagen where Christian Eriksen is being treated. Good morning to you. I guess today we await further news as to his condition.
Yes, we're still waiting for an update. The last we heard was last night, where he was known to be conscious and in a stable condition. We're waiting for an update this morning. Last night we heard at the press conference from one of the team doctors who actually went onto the pitch. He confirmed that Eriksen did indeed receive CPR, and that when they first arrived on the pitch, he was breathing and had a pulse, but then things quickly changed. Obviously, they were treating him for several minutes on the pitch before he was brought here to the hospital in central Copenhagen. We're just waiting to hear more reports, but we've also heard that this morning Danish media is saying that Eriksen last night was messaging his teammates at Inter Milan. So he did confirm that he was in touch with them last night. We don't know the contents of those messages, but we do know, obviously, he was well enough to send those.
Thank you, Adrian. Adrian Murray there, reporting live from Copenhagen.
Well, our sports correspondent John Watson is live at Wembley for us this morning. And John, the organisers say the England game, everything else will just go ahead as planned.
Yes, Sally, good morning. You wonder, though, don't you, if the situation regarding Christian Eriksen's condition was any different, whether or not the tournament would have continued. Of course, huge relief, as you can imagine, when news came through from UEFA as Christian Eriksen was taken to hospital, that he was stable, that he would remain there for further examination. And it was from there that he was able to communicate with his Danish teammates, and that prompted that request to UEFA for the match to resume. As you can imagine, the impact was certainly felt here at Wembley, where England faced Croatia at 2 o'clock this afternoon. The England manager, Gareth Southgate, at the time, with news still coming through, he felt it wasn't appropriate for last night's press conference to go ahead. He, of course, led tributes and messages of support for Christian Eriksen last night. We saw the Duke of Cambridge as well do the same. He posted on social media last night encouraging news about Christian Eriksen. We are all thinking about him and his family. Well done to the medical team and Anthony Taylor for their calm and swift action. And Harry Kane as well, the England captain, who we'll see play here later on, spent many years playing alongside Christian Eriksen for Tottenham. He said, "Chris, I'm sending all my love to you and your family. Stay strong, mate." And it is, of course, the quick thinking of the English referee Anthony Taylor that has been praised for getting the medics onto the pitch so quickly to ensure that Christian Eriksen received that much-needed treatment. We heard from a cardiologist speaking to the BBC yesterday who said that every minute lost, there is a 7% reduction in the chance of survival. We saw Romelu Lukaku leading tributes as well, playing for Belgium, an Inter Milan teammate. And I imagine, Sally, that when play takes place later, England in action against Croatia, I imagine those tributes will continue, because events yesterday has certainly put things in perspective, hasn't it?
Hasn't it just? John, thanks very much indeed. That's John Watson live and a glorious, very sunny looking Wembley for us this morning.
Now, a decision on whether to lift all of England's lockdown restrictions on the 21st of June is expected to be taken later today.
It is before the Prime Minister makes an announcement tomorrow, however. He's already said the government must be cautious as hospital admissions increase. Simon Jones reports.
A barbecue on the beach last night at the G7 summit in Cornwall. But Boris Johnson, enjoying a drink, has a lot on his mind. Whether the lifting of the remaining coronavirus restrictions in England should go ahead as scheduled on the 21st of June, with caution the watchword.
You've got to be cautious in order to deliver what we want to see, which is an irreversible roadmap. But we're looking at the data today. That again, you've got hospitalizations up, you've got cases up. There are grounds for caution. That doesn't mean that this country hasn't made enormous progress with vaccination. Clearly, what you've got is a race between the vaccines and the virus, and the vaccines are going to win. It's just a question of the pace.
Surge testing in the London borough of Kingston to try to identify cases of the Delta variant first discovered in India. It's the rapid rise in numbers that is causing the potential rethink, which could see a delay of a month to the lockdown being declared over, with an inevitable impact on the economy. Although nightlife has returned to towns and cities, many venues are operating at far below their capacity, with food and drink having to be ordered at tables. So any further delay in the lifting of lockdown will come as a bitter blow to businesses. They were hoping that removing limits on social contact would allow pubs, clubs, theatres and cinemas to operate how they used to before the pandemic.
Not really sure about a week's time. I think it needs to be done with more thought. Obviously, this is a bit crazy. I think thought needs to go into it, but definitely people are not going to do another lockdown.
I just feel like we should just go on June 21st. Because the rates are going down, no? They're going up. I heard they were going down. Yeah, for that reason, I understand why it's getting pushed back.
The plan for what happens next is expected to be signed off later today, although it's not due to be made public until Monday. Simon Jones, BBC News.
Well, it's going to be another busy day for the leaders at the G7 summit in Cornwall today, but the Prime Minister will also be looking ahead to his announcement tomorrow.
Let's talk to our chief political correspondent, Adam Fleming, who is there in Cornwall for us. And you're going to talk to us, Adam, about their serious stuff, I know, but it always pays to keep an eye over your shoulder and movements in the sea as well early in the morning.
Yeah, Chris, a little insight into G7 summit life. This time in the morning is when you see the big names doing their exercise. So yesterday morning, when I was chatting to breakfast, Tony Blinken, who's the US Secretary of State, their chief diplomat, just went for a little jog just behind the camera. And this morning, our cameras have spotted the Prime Minister out having a little swim and a little jog on the beach as well. So a little moment of respite for him in between making that decision about what to do about the final step of the roadmap out of lockdown in England, which really does look like it's going to be delayed now beyond the 21st of June, and also looking ahead to the final day of the summit here at Carbis Bay. They're going to start off by talking about values and democracy, which is code for what to do about Russia and China. And then the last session will be a pep talk on climate change from Sir David Attenborough. Then we'll get press conferences from all the leaders, and we'll get the all-important communiqué, the document that sets out all the decisions that have been made here, or maybe some of the decisions that haven't been made. And we will to read between the lines to see what disputes there might have been on issues like climate change, investment programs abroad, cybersecurity, you name it. Interestingly, though, the only row that has bust out into the open so far is that one between the UK and the EU about the implementation of the Brexit deal in Northern Ireland, which has been rumbling for a little while and is going to rumble for a little while longer, because yesterday the Prime Minister increased the temperature on that just hours after the EU had asked him to dial it down.
I've got to promise you, Adam, I was listening to every syllable you uttered there and not absolutely mesmerised by those pictures of the Prime Minister going into the sea. I mean, far for me to offer a commentary on him entering the water, but there was not a moment's hesitation. I mean, when I do my going into the sea thing, it's a bit cold, and then you get to the crucial bit where the water reaches a strategically important zone and there's another hesitation. But no, he was straight in.
Well, Chris, one of our very close colleagues, so I will not name, Laura, went in the sea yesterday, and she's like, nope, you've got to go straight in. So she's got the same approach to getting in the sea. She's like, you can't hesitate, or that's when you turn round. She's like, you just got to dive straight in. But unfortunately, I forgot my swimming trunks. So
it's one exclusive after another this morning. Thank you, Adam. Cheers.
I mean, look at that. That's live now. That glorious shot of St Ives. I don't know, can we spot anybody in the sea at the moment?
Is that Angela Merkel doing...
I don't know, doing backstroke.
Doing butterfly.
Does Boris Johnson know that someone is filming him swimming, do you think?
Short answer, yes.
Yeah, interesting.
Quite a pair of shorts, wasn't it?
Yeah. Fancy a trip to space as a reaction perhaps to all of that? I'm not sure. Well, if you have a spare £20 million up your sleeve, you might be in with a chance.
That is because that is how much one mystery bidder paid for a seat on the rocket that is owned by the Amazon boss, Jeff Bezos. David Willis reports.
Looking for $4,900,000.
After a month-long bidding process which attracted interest from more than 140 countries, the top bid stood at just under $5 million. But once an online auction got underway, that figure rose dramatically.
That is sold $28 million.
The winner's identity has yet to be revealed, but their $28 million donation buys them a seat alongside the world's richest man on his Blue Origin spacecraft for its maiden voyage beyond the Earth's atmosphere. Blue Origin is hailing the sightseeing trip, which is due to take place on the 20th of July, as a landmark moment in commercial space travel.
You see the Earth from space, it changes you. It changes your relationship with this planet, with humanity. It's one Earth.
But a rival space pioneer could steal a march on Mr. Bezos. It's thought Richard Branson might join a test flight of his Virgin VSS Unity spaceplane on the 4th of July. Funds raised from the Blue Origin auction are being donated to charity. David Willis, BBC News, Los Angeles.
The Queen will host the US President and First Lady at Windsor Castle later this afternoon as the G7 summit in Cornwall draws to a close.
Joe Biden and his wife Jill will be welcomed by a guard of honour, followed by tea at the royal residence. He'll be the 12th US leader the Queen has met during her reign. Our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell reports.
It's a busy weekend for the Queen. On Friday evening, she was in Cornwall meeting the G7 leaders and posing with them for a group photograph.
Are you supposed to be looking as if you're enjoying it?
Yes, definitely.
Yesterday at Windsor, she watched a scaled-down Trooping the Colour marking her 95th birthday. And it will be at Windsor Castle this afternoon that she will welcome President Biden and the First Lady. No one else in public life can have met as many US presidents as the Queen. During the nearly 70 years of her reign, she's met 12 of them. Notably, in the early 1960s, she met President John F. Kennedy and his wife Jacqueline. In the 1980s, she and President Ronald Reagan were brought together through their shared love of horses. They went riding together during the president's visit to Windsor. There appeared to be rather less affinity during the most recent presidential visit to Windsor. That was in 2018, when Donald Trump and his wife came for tea. That visit is principally remembered for the president having walked in front of the Queen as they inspected a guard of honour. But all the presidential visitors have one thing in common: a respect for a monarch who's now the world's longest-serving head of state, and who, for all her non-political role, is able in subtle ways to underpin Britain's reputation. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News.
Well, let's have a chat with the royal editor of the Sunday Times, Roya Nicker. Morning to you. What's really striking as far as the Queen's schedule is concerned, particularly given her age, is how busy she is. The trip to the G7, trooping the colour, and then meeting the President this afternoon.
Good morning. Well, absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head there. And actually, as well as all of that work, she carries on each day doing her red boxes. We know throughout the week, as the G7 leaders were starting to arrive here, she was holding virtual video calls with the likes of Justin Trudeau and lots of other politicians and diplomats. So it's interesting. I wrote a piece in the Sunday Times yesterday and today when I was at Trooping, just saying that all those people who suggested that she was going to hand over the reins of power to the Prince of Wales when she was 95, if anything, as royal aides around her say, she's ramping up and busier than ever. And this big meeting with the Bidens today at Windsor Castle will be a real focal point of that.
We saw, though, in Nick's report, all of the pictures of the previous presidents that she has met. And when you read the memoirs of former prime ministers who have their regular audiences with her, they talk about how valuable that one-on-one private chat is because of the wisdom of a lifetime that she has of meeting world leaders.
Well, that's exactly it. And there is no figure living today in the world who has that breadth of experience in terms of international diplomacy, experience of very tricky situations throughout the years with some world leaders. Of, you know, that special relationship with the US is normally very strong, but it has gone through some tricky times. And the Queen has so often been deployed to seal the bonds of that special relationship, not just with America, but with some of our closest allies around the world, and some of the trickiest international leaders too, who she's hosted over here. So when you talk about prime ministers, who have spoken about how valuable those audiences are, and world leaders, presidents as well, who come and see her, those conversations at Windsor Castle or Buckingham Palace are never briefed out. So you might get a sense of a few topics of conversation, but there will be things that Joe Biden and the Queen discussed today that we will never know, and that Joe Biden will know can stay private, and so does the Queen.
Talk us through the choreography for today, what the President and the First Lady will witness, will see.
Well, they are going to experience the full pomp and pageantry that the UK and Her Majesty the Queen is able to offer to world leaders. When they come to Windsor Castle today, they will come into the quadrangle where the different sort of scaled down Trooping the Colour was held yesterday, and they will be there at the dais with the Queen, and then the President will inspect an honour guard formed by the Grenadier Guards. So it will look quite similar to the working visit of that we saw with Donald Trump in 2018 when he famously walked in front of the Queen. And then after that sort of big, very visual moment with the military, they will then go inside Windsor Castle and take tea together. Very quaint.
You touched on this a moment ago, and it's what's often described as soft power, isn't it? That the value, as many see it, of the royal family and being able to project British values and priorities, but in a softer way than the inevitably harder nature of the political discussions at the G7 over the last couple of days.
Well, we really saw that soft power deployed in huge force at the G7 on Friday. And, that was something that Boris Johnson and his government were very, very keen to see. They had said months ago when it first emerged that the royal family were going to be at the G7, they wanted the strongest possible presence of the royal family there. We've never seen so many royal families, members of the royal family at a G7 summit. So, we saw the Prince of Wales talking about climate change and sustainability. We saw Prince William there with him, and the Queen and Camilla and Kate all there, talking to world leaders, but doing it in a way that heads of sort of government can't do. It's non-political, but it's highly effective.
We were touching on at the start of our conversation the nature of her schedule and how arguably punishing it is, particularly given her age. And of course, we shouldn't forget, it's only a matter of weeks ago since she lost her husband, and yet carrying on that commitment to duty that has marked her entire reign, there for us all to see in the last few days.
But I think it's really important to remember that there is no one pushing her to do that punishing schedule. It's her choice. And she has been so keen for many months to get back out there to start doing more physical engagements. I think people forget that she has continued working at the same pace behind closed doors at Windsor Castle, taking meetings, doing her red boxes. But we are about to see an even busier period for the Queen over the next couple of months. We expect to see her up in Scotland at the end of this month for Holyrood Week, doing a week of engagements up there. Mm-hmm. And I'm told in July that she will do a very high-profile engagement that royal aides say will capture the public's imagination. So something quite curious and interesting to look forward to there. But she is busier than ever. She's not winding down.
That is intriguing. Before you go, Roy, I've got to ask you about my favourite story in the newspapers this morning, written by you. So you've got to tell us about the Queen and, well, not just Line of Duty, but the X Factor.
Yes, the gaffer of Windsor Castle is a Line of Duty fan. So I loved this when I heard this the other day. It's interesting, you talk about how she's kept going in what has been one of the toughest years of her life with, a lot of controversy across the pond with Harry and Meghan losing her husband. And during those difficult months in March and April, I'm told she was glued to Line of Duty and loved talking about all the twists and turns and plot lines with one of her closest aides. And she's also an X Factor fan. And when she did an official tour to Ireland in 2011, she met Mary O'Byrne, who was one of the contestants, and told her song was fabulous, and she watched every episode. So there you go.
What a fantastic insight. It's always a joy to talk to you, Roya. Thanks very much. Roya Nicker there of the Sunday Times.
Great insight.
Absolutely.
It's what we need to know, isn't it? It's 23 minutes past 8. You're watching Breakfast from BBC News. It's going to be pretty glorious in lots of parts of the country this morning. Morning, Matt.
Morning, Sally. Don't the skies look beautiful this morning? Blue skies, really good clarity to it as well. It isn't the same everywhere, admittedly, but for many of you, you're going to stick with that all day long. Let me just take you, though, to the west of Scotland, Argyll and Bute now. A lot more cloud. There are some glimpses of blue skies. I can see them there, but clouds will dominate the north and west of the country today. And even with it, though, it's going to be a humid day, quite a warm day, not hot day for all of us. Now, the thickest cloud across the far north and northwest of Scotland will bring some rain later on. Most of us, vast majority of the UK, will be dry. Sunny spells across Scotland, Northern Ireland. The cloud we've got in Northern England, North Wales at the moment will break up to allow some sunshine through. Further south and east, the heat is on. Temperatures here with very high pollen levels could get up to around 27 or 28 degrees, maybe even 29 in around central London, making it the hottest day of the year so far. And we could see 26, 27 towards the east of Scotland too. It is certainly the heat which will dominate the match, probably for those heading there at Wembley later on, 28, 29 possible with the sunshine overhead. And as we go through this evening, it will be a fine, warm evening for the vast majority. England, Wales will stay dry tonight. Scotland, Northern Ireland, though, cloud and rain will push its way southwards across most parts during the night. It will allow things to turn a bit fresher to the far north and west later in the night, but a humid, muggy night across England and Wales to take us into tomorrow morning. Now, it's these amber colours here, which are denoting where the more humid air is. Notice that we've got something fresher pushing southwards behind this weather front. Now, this is where it will be first thing on Monday morning. It's a zone of cloud, some patchy rain and drizzle. Northern England, North Wales. The rain and drizzle will fizzle off it. The cloud will break up, but it's pushing its way southwards through the day. To north of it, sunny spells, a fresher feel than today with some showers in western Scotland. Temperatures mid to high teens, maybe low 20s, but the humid air lasts another day towards that southeast corner 28 to potentially 30 degrees, not out the question. As you go into Tuesday, high pressure builds back in once again, and we'll start to see humid air try to win its way back. Tuesday, though, a little bit fresher for those in the south and the east of Italy. The morning cloud break up, lots of sunshine around. Bright start for Scotland, Northern Ireland, clouding over late at the north and west with outbreaks of rain and strengthening wind. Temperatures here on the up a little bit compared with Monday, down in the south, but still pretty warm, and it gets humid again for most into Wednesday. Some rain and cloud towards the north and the west. We could see some storms approach from the south later in the day. That's how it's looking. Back to Bo.
Matt, thanks very much indeed.
Now, the Cornish Shanty men, Do Hagor, are more used to singing at pubs and festivals, but last night they performed their biggest gig so far as they serenaded presidents, prime ministers and chancellors.
Yes, the group entertained world's leaders at the G7 summit's beach barbecue. We can have a listen to a bit of their traditional maritime song right now.
We're bound for South Australia. In
South Australia, my native land.
Heave away, haul away.
Full of seas and sand.
We're bound for South Australia. Heave away, haul away.
Haul away, you'll hear me sing.
We're bound for South Australia.
I wish I was on Australia's strand.
We do too, we do too.
With a bottle of whiskey in me hand.
We're bound for South Australia.
All the way,
heave away, haul away.
All away, you'll hear me sing.
We're bound for South Australia.
That is absolutely marvellous.
Amazing.
Round of applause from in here.
Wonderful.
Well, we're joined now by two members of the group, or should it be three? Vernon Keane and Alan Collins, plus the dog, Ronnie. And Ronnie has got a story to tell, which we'll come to in a bit. Morning to you, gents, and morning to you, Ronnie.
Good morning.
Alan first. Take us back to that moment when the phone rings or the email pings in and they say, we've got a gig for you.
Well, it's a sort of a pinching moment, really. We can't thank Simon Stallard enough to involve all the local people. He said, you know, the Flower Girls were going to stay local and us singing, the entertainment. So he kept it very local, and that was a lovely touch that when we then turned up at the gig and for the G7, that, you know, familiar faces. It was a lovely touch. So thank you, Simon and the Hidden Heart. Brilliant.
Vernon, am I right in thinking you had a bit of a starring role there last night? Were you doing a little bit of solo singing?
Well, you'd hardly call it solo. I mean, there's six of us. We work together. I mean, I get all of the abuse, really. That's what happens.
How nerve-wracking was it?
It was in one respect, in the fact that it was quite late in the evening by the time we started, because the weather was against it, in that it was a little bit chilly. But yeah, we had a great time. Honestly, we had a really good time. Yeah.
And Alan, it must have just been a surreal feeling. There you are singing in front of all of these faces that you see so often on the telly, but they're there and they're listening to you.
It was such a good time because they gave us a cue that sort of the doors to the dining area would be open and the leaders would come out and we were to start singing. Well, of course, they came out and Boris Johnson and Carrie, I mean, they were so enthusiastic. But we started with South Australia. And Scott Morrison, the Australian Prime Minister, I mean, he joined in. He was really enthusiastic. It was such a good gig for us, really. And the guys, well, we were so pumped up. I mean, you know, it was really a nice evening. Yeah. And then afterwards, we were asked if we would go and sing to the delegates, of course, the support staff, and it was like a Wembley moment. I mean, they came out with their phones and the lights going. I mean, you know, we did feel really special and privileged to be there.
Oh, a fantastic moment. I have to ask, though, Alan, Ronnie, obviously star of the show for us here this morning, normally would be with you when you're singing. What happened?
Yeah. Yes, well, he is a regular at our gigs and our training sessions, and he's a bit of a character within the village. And yeah, the Home Office said, apologies, but he can't come. So I broke the news to him lightly. So and he's forgiven me.
What did he say?
But he's here now today. So, so yeah, we just he's a big part of my life, and we go everywhere together.
Why couldn't he come?
He's a little distracted.
Well, I think it was just the security reasons, or maybe health and safety. I'm not quite sure. I mean, it's one of those things. If that's in place, then we comply. And that's. But there we go. He's a little bit distracted today because we're at a location here with plenty of wildlife, and his nose is twitching. And,
is there a squirrel?
Yeah. There are squirrels behind me.
Yes, that is a dog that spotted a squirrel, if ever I've seen one.
Ronnie snubbed by world leaders. And, I think that'd be my headline.
Yeah.
So what's next for you two boys then? I guess whatever the next gig is will feel, well, it'll be different, that's for certain, from the one you did last night.
Well, next week is the 19th Falmouth International Shanty Festival, which is a virtual affair this year, unfortunately, but it is so well supported. We've done a little video for that, and there are hundreds of shanty singers that will be on next weekend for about 3 hours, 2 or 3 hours. And it's on the television, and they support so many shanty gigs throughout Cornwall, and it'll be another good weekend for us. Just after that, I think the week after that, we've got an event at a local hotel, which we're looking forward to.
Thank you
Don't worry,
both, all three.
On the ground.
Thanky for talking to us, particularly after the night you had last night, where it might have been tempting to, have a few whiskies and have a lie-in. So we're grateful to you. Thanks for getting up.
No, it was a completely dry night. And we left. It was early hours of the morning before we got back, and obviously an early start today. But you're more than welcome.
Thanks very much.
And Ronnie, you can go after those squirrels now. Thanks very much. Cheers. Thank you.
Isn't that great?
Fantastic.
Really, really lovely to see Alan and Vernon and, of course, Ronnie. Disappointed they didn't get a beer.
Yeah.
Even a shandy. Something.
Yes, what was it? Buttered rum, I think, which I'd never heard of, which the leaders were having last night. You might have thought there'd be a few spoonfuls of that left after their performance.
Might be a bit of rum going round today, actually, because it's pretty tropical, the weather.
Coming
up in the next half hour, get your sun cream and beach towels at the ready. It's going to be a scorcher. We'll be live at a Lido in London to see how people there will be spending their sunny Sunday.
Stay with us. Headlines coming up.
The myth, legend, the icon.
He's an absolute genius.
Like it or not, this is the future of football.
The best player in the world. He changed the game. He wanted to be loved.
Every winner has an ego.
He believes he's the best. In my mind, I'm always the best.
Cristiano Ronaldo, impossible to ignore. Streaming now on iPlayer.
Hello, this is Breakfast with Chris Mason and Sally Nugent.
25 to 9, more or less. Now, it's the final day of the G7 summit in Cornwall, and the world leaders will meet Sir David Attenborough for a conversation on climate change.
But the Prime Minister has big decisions to make closer to home as he prepares for tomorrow's lockdown announcement, which will outline if all COVID restrictions in England will be lifted later on this month. Well, I'm delighted to say our political editor, Laura Koonsberg, joins us live this morning. Morning to you, Laura. Great to see you. I know you have been chatting to the Prime Minister.
Good morning, Sally and Chris. This isn't bad, is it?
It's really, really nice. We've been talking. It looks like Saint-Tropez. I'm sure it's quite hard work, though. You've been chatting to Boris Johnson, haven't you? What's he said about the likelihood of lifting of restrictions in the coming weeks?
Well, Sally, as you said, the final decision is going to be made late tonight and then announced to the country tomorrow. So Boris Johnson didn't want to confirm anything when we spoke to him yesterday. But he didn't deny that there was going to be some kind of a delay. He certainly was keen to emphasise how cautious he thinks that we have to be now as a nation, you know, keeping going with the vaccine, not rushing into lifting everything just as coronavirus is starting to take off again. And I got the very, very strong impression that Downing Street pretty much has accepted that they are going to have to announce some kind of delay. It could be as long as another 4 weeks before every single restriction is lifted off and life gets completely back to something that looks a bit like normal. But I think the real thing that's driving the decision on number 10 is what they don't want to do, which they had to do before, is lift limits on our lives, only had to have to then slap them back down if the virus were to take off again in a really serious way. I mean, remember what's happening at the moment, you know, because of the Delta variant that started in India, cases have been rising again. More people are being taken to hospital, but because of the vaccine, because most vulnerable people are covered now, it's not happening in the same way that it did so frighteningly in the autumn or at the beginning of all this. But at the same time, Downing Street really wants to be sure that it is the right time to lift all the limits. And I don't think that they're going to think the right time is a week tomorrow.
It's interesting, isn't it, Laura, because there's one important word we've heard over the last couple of months, which is irreversible. You know, that the changes that they make going ahead need to be irreversible changes. Do you think that word might come back to haunt the Prime Minister in coming months?
I think that's exactly it, Sally. And actually, when we were talking to him yesterday, he used that word probably about a dozen times. You know, he kept saying it has to be an irreversible roadmap. And I think that they feel a bit stung by some of the things that have happened before. You know, remember what happened at Christmas time when they said, yeah, you know, pack your presents, pack your cases, you'll be able to go off and see some members of your family that you might not have seen for months at such a special time of year. And then at the very last minute, they had to call it off. And I think that that memory of that kind of really, well, it felt quite chaotic, didn't it, at the time? I think that memory is really strong in number 10. And now they just don't want to get into that kind of situation again where they'd have to go back on any of it. And that was the real impression that I got from asking Boris Johnson about it tomorrow. And it's interesting, Sally, because it's been a real sort of contrast this week. You can see that the Prime Minister is loving having world leaders here in this sort of spectacular part of the country. You can see that he's really sort of buzzing off playing the host. But at the same time, he's got this terrible dilemma over what to do about coronavirus cases, which is such a big decision for everybody at home. Remember also, his decision relates just to England, but the four nations, you know, they've taken a bit of a different pace sometimes over lockdown. But if England is pausing, I think it's probably quite likely that the other three parts of the UK will do the same in one form or another. So this really is a big momentous decision, but there's a real tension over it. You know, it's not just all a laugh at the beach. There's really, really big things going on here too. And I know yesterday Boris Johnson joined some of his senior ministers for the very latest data briefing, that they had a kind of remote meeting here, squeezed in between the glad handing with people like Emmanuel Macron and the President of the United States.
Obviously serious subjects to be covered, but we do know that, as you mentioned, Boris Johnson appears to be enjoying having the world leaders in this glorious setting. And also, yes, also this morning, just in the last couple of hours, enjoying all the glories of the sea and like everything that
at least
Cornwall
he remembered
has
his
to
trunks.
offer. Yes. Laura, we're showing pictures at the moment of the Prime Minister taking a morning dip and now walking along the beach with his wife. You know, he clearly is aware that he's being filmed. This is all part of, I imagine, how he wants to present this G7 summit, appearing to be, you know, relaxed and enjoying the situation. And we also hear that he's not the only one who's taken a dip in the sea.
Well, I think there are quite a few people here who might have had the odd little paddle, although the sea is pretty freezing, even though it is absolutely spectacular. But I think you're right. One of the things I think Downing Street's actually tried to do very deliberately is give this summit a very kind of informal tone, make it look like, well, the leaders are relaxed and they're enjoying it. You know, they had the barbecue on the beach last night. We saw some really fascinating pictures of, you know, Boris Johnson getting a beer for him and Emmanuel Macron. We had Angela Merkel people then going up and inspecting the barbecue and seeing what the chefs were doing with the fish over the flames. And I think it's been very deliberate. You know, quite often, Chris, you know this from the summits that we've covered together over the years, quite often they're quite stuffy, they're quite formal. You know, you're sort of in a big conference centre that feels like an aircraft hangar somewhere. There's security everywhere. And I think that Number 10 have very deliberately tried to keep a different sort of tone and a different sort of flavour to all of this, because they believe actually the optics of these kind of meetings, to use the jargon, you know, the kind of buzz, the look, the feel, is actually something that's really important. You know, these leaders haven't been together in person for more than a year. Some of them, in fact, had never even met each other before. You know, the President and the Prime Minister had only ever talked on Zoom or on the phone. So for the two of them, actually this personal meeting has been really, really important. Now, it will be vital later tonight when we get the communique, the final document that they'll publish with exactly what they've actually agreed. It's going to be absolutely vital to look at precisely what they've actually been able to do in black and white. You know, how many vaccines are they going to really get to the developed world? Are they really going to keep promises about all their big talk about the climate in terms of trying to help developing countries get better at green technology to try to start targeting their emissions and those kinds of things? But the personal chemistry of these relationships does matter. It's partly a matter of human nature, isn't it? You know, these leaders have got big problems that they want to try to solve. We all know as human beings, if you know someone well, if you get on with them, well, it's a bit easier to do something with them, isn't it? It's a bit easier to pick up the phone and to try to get something done if you understand each other, if you know where the other one's coming from. Now, there has been, you know, tension this week for sure between the EU leaders and Boris Johnson over trying to sort out how Brexit is affecting things in Northern Ireland. And that standoff hasn't been resolved in the last couple of days at all. You know, there's been the odd bit of sizzle around the sausage wars, as some people in the tabloids are enjoying causing it. You know, that's still a serious problem that has to be worked out. But the alchemy and the sort of bonhomie and the image of all of this, that does matter too. Because politics, well, they say politics is personal, and it does matter whether or not these leaders have got on. And I think Downing Street are very, very pleased with how this has looked and felt. But at the end of the day, we're not flies on the wall in those actual crunch meetings between the leaders. And it will be really important to look carefully at the detail of actually what they've agreed later today.
Laura, before I let you go, I know you've got a crazy busy day ahead. A little bird told us earlier on the programme, you beat Boris.
Adam Fleming.
You beat Boris Johnson into the sea. You've already had a swim. What was it like?
Oh, actually, I went in yesterday. It was amazing, but it was freezing. But it felt like, you know, that feeling like you've got thousands of tiny needles all over your body, but then you sort of come out and feeling, but I was very tired yesterday from a few long days' work. So I thought the only way to solve this, run into the sea. And I didn't immediately run straight out again, but I might not have lasted that long.
Laura, I salute your bravery. I really admire that. Run straight in, that's it. Just get in quick. Laura Koonsberg, thank you so much. Great to talk to you.
Run straight in. Actually, I did it twice. Run straight in.
Wow.
A pleasure. Always great to talk.
Yeah, see you soon, Laura. Thanks very much.
The
Run
medicine of
straight
the
in.
ocean. Yeah.
That's good life advice.
It is. Well, I'm
Some
not sure.
situations.
Don't go in, I think, is just as good life advice, I'd say. Here's the image in Carbis Bay. You can see why they picked this corner of Cornwall to woo some of the world's most powerful leaders.
Tell you what, they were lucky to get accommodation. I can tell you, Chris, I've been trying. It's impossible.
Well, they could have been in a campsite or something.
Maybe they booked it early, yes. Now, I have to say, everybody, it is now time for us to say goodbye to Chris. He's off to read the news for Andrew Marr.
I am indeed, but I will leave you in Sally's company for the next 15 minutes and with Matt, who has the weather with just as much sunshine and just as much blue sky, I'm delighted to see, in God's own county as well.
Just for you, Chris, before you head off. Yes, blue skies all the way from Cornwall to Yorkshire at the moment. It is a beautiful start for many. I wish I could say it was blue skies everywhere this morning. It's not the case. There is quite a bit of cloud in the west of Scotland at the moment. This is just to the west of Glasgow. But whether you've got the sunshine or the cloud, it is going to be a pretty warm day today for the vast majority. Let's take a look at what's happening out there from space. You can just see a little bit of cloud on Northern England, North Wales and to the southeast of Northern Ireland. That's going to thin and break. Cloud, though, to the northwest of Scotland is going to dominate throughout today, and it will turn wetter later on across Lewis, Harris and eventually into Orkney and Shetland. But for most, it's dry day with long spells of sunshine, some complete blue skies, and that is going to help pollen levels up, but also help those temperatures too. 28, 29 Celsius possible across some parts of central southern England, up to 26 in eastern Scotland, but even to the west of Scotland where we'll see that bit more cloud, 23 degrees. And if you want to do a Laura Kunsberg and run into the sea, you'll have to be a bit braver the further north you are. Sea temperatures at the moment are only around 12 Celsius, so around 15 or 16 further south across the country. Now into this evening and overnight, rain in the Highlands and Islands of Scotland will push its way southwards across the rest of Scotland, Northern Ireland, clearing up in its wake, but quite a breezy start to tomorrow morning. A fresher feel here. Humid start across the south, and the humid air will last throughout Monday across East Anglia and South East, where again we can see temperatures 28, 29 degrees. But for many of you tomorrow, a fresher day in prospect. We'll see temperatures around the high teens or low 20s, but there's more humid air coming back through Tuesday night into Wednesday. So it's going to be a chip-chop sort of week between the humid and the fresher conditions. That's how it's looking. Enjoy your Sunday. Sally, back to you.
Matt, thanks for your company this morning. It's been great to have you on the show. Thank you.
Love to be here.
Now, the Denmark midfielder Christian Eriksen is said to be stable in hospital after collapsing during the Euro 2020 match against Finland last night. The former Spurs player received life-saving treatment on the pitch after he fell to the ground. The game was suspended before half-time but was then resumed. Fans gathered outside the hospital in Copenhagen last night to pay their respects and offer their support. Well, Chetan is here with all of the sports news and everything pretty much dominated by that this morning, Chetan.
Absolutely, and that picture we saw of Christian Eriksen there on the stretcher was on the front page of pretty much every newspaper in Denmark, saying Denmark lost, but life won. And I think now people are trying to look for the optimism, the hope, the fact that the Denmark players came together in the way they did at that protective wall, the way that both fans, Finland and Denmark, chanted Eriksen's name. But I still have to say it feels hard, doesn't it, to get excited about the football itself, because this matters so much more. But UEFA says it will continue because of the fact that these matches will be played, and we saw that continue yesterday with the Belgium game thereafter, the fact that both Denmark and Finland came on and resumed their match too. And we were in doubt initially about whether the tournament itself would continue and what would happen today, but England will get their campaign started against Croatia at Wembley this afternoon. And to discuss that and more, let's speak to the former England midfielder Chris Waddle, who's part of the BBC Radio 5 Live team and joins us now. Chris, thanks for being on breakfast this morning. Got to start with what happened to Christian Eriksen. Watching that as someone who's played the game at the top level, how did you feel? And especially about the way that the players from both sides responded.
Well, it was quite scary, let's be perfectly honest. I've never really seen anything like that in my football career. I was shocked. I've got to say that the players deserve a lot of credit to go back out and play football again. I found that unbelievable how they had the mental strength to go out and play football again after watching a teammate. And we saw how they got round them and they were crying and they were really shocked, like everybody was. It was amazing. There's not words really you can talk about it. It was absolutely frightening, and we're just pleased. And hopefully he's on his way back to a full recovery. But for that period when he was on the floor, I mean, that was really scary.
It wasn't even 2 hours when they resumed that game. Do you think you would have been able to continue?
I mean, listen, footballers get on with it, and that's the way football is. But as I said, I was very shocked when I saw some of the players where they were standing there when Christian Eriksen was lying on the floor. I thought it would be impossible. And when they said the game suspended, I thought, well, you might have to make some substitutions because some of them players were in bits. And for them to come back out and obviously finish the game, you've got to give them a lot of credit for doing that mental strength, because I don't know if I could have went back out there.
Harry Kane, amongst those England players, tweeting his support to his friend and former teammate at Spurs, of course, saying, stay strong, mate. England get going against Croatia at Wembley this afternoon, keeping in mind what happened in 2018 when Croatia knocked England out of the World Cup, of course. How tough a start is this, do you think, for England, Chris?
It's a test. Let's be honest. Croatia, last 6-7 games haven't really had great results, and not against strong opposition as well in some of the games. We know they've got world-class players. The midfield three is as good as anything in the tournament. They do struggle. Mandzukic obviously retired. They haven't really replaced him. They've tried a lot of players to put that ball in the net, and that's where they find it hard. They're a very good tactical team, technically, they can pass the ball, they keep the ball, they want to be in charge of the ball. And the problem England's going to get today for me is We know Croatia are technically very good, but the heat's not going to help England because England like to try and press, play a high tempo, get the ball back.
In 2016, do you think they've come a long way in the last 5 years?
Yeah, I think we've got a lot of variation of players now going forward, which we probably didn't have great selection over the last few years before that. We had a lot. The suspect now is with England is defensively in the last few games they have looked suspect at the back, which obviously is not a good sign. But going forward, England's as good as anybody.
And one of the youngest squads in the tournament too, and lots being said about that attacking talent they've got and how exciting they are. How far do you think England can go?
I do believe, I think we'll win the group. And then it's the next round, isn't it? If you win the group, you're going to get one of the big three out of the group of death, as they're calling it. And that is going to be a massive test. If you're going to play France or Portugal, as an example, that is going to be a really tough game. And, that could go anyway. Yeah, of course England can win it. But also Portugal would beat England and France could beat England. So I think there's a lot going on that game. I think if England can come through that game, or whoever they play against, I think that'll give them a lot more confidence to take them basically to the semis, if not the final.
22,500 fans for England at Wembley for these three group matches, including that really big one on Friday against Scotland. How important will that home advantage be for England?
Yeah, it will be. And listen, 22,000... they'll still make enough noise. The players have been waiting to play in front of crowds. It's so important to a player when you've got a crowd behind you. It is what you need, and empty stadiums makes the game very even. So for all those only 22,000, they could have a big impact today and a lot of help for England against Croatia.
Well, it should be fascinating to see what happens this afternoon. Chris Waddle, thank you, Chris, part of the 5 Live commentary team. Yesterday at the tournament, meanwhile, Wales fought back to get what could yet prove to be a crucial draw against Switzerland in their opening match at the Euros. They went behind just... Also, last night, Belgium beat Russia 3-0 in Group B. This man getting a couple of the goals. That's the same group as Denmark and Finland. Romelu Lukaku. Now, England's cricketers on the verge of defeat against New Zealand in the second test at Edgbaston. Not good at all. They'll resume this morning with a lead of just 37 after being reduced to 112 for 9 in their second innings. Captain Joe Root amongst England's top order failures. Nobody really got going with the bat at all. Mark Wood top score with just 29, but he fell to Neil Wagner, so England almost certainly set to lose this 2-match series after that first test was drawn. Now, it's men's finals day at the French Open with the 18-time Grand Slam winner Novak Djokovic taking on the Greek 5th seed Stefanos Tsitsipas in his first Grand.
Chetan, thanks very much.
For now.
Yeah, been a really emotional weekend at the tennis, hasn't it? Thank you. Now, what will Ibiza, California and Mykonos all have in common later on today? Well, I can tell you, they will all be colder than the UK. Yesterday is set to be a scorcher and the hottest day of the year so far. But our reporter Ben Boulos may have one solution to keeping cool. He's at a lido in East London. Ben, I think you're about to make everybody watching very, very jealous. Morning, Ben.
You know, Sally, how in every pool you have that one person in the wrong lane getting in everyone's way. Well, this morning, that's me. And what would you expect? Who needs the beaches of Benidorm when you've got this? The London Fields Lido, and sent here to do this tough gig? Well, how could I resist the tempting water? And I'm clearly not the only one. The pool has been busy since really early this morning. People getting here, getting their slots early and doing their laps, getting the laps in this glorious sunny weather. Well, let's speak to Raf, the pool manager. Raf, is it always this busy, or is it just the sun and the heat that have brought people out?
Always that busy. The sun makes it even harder. I mean, to get a slot on a day like today, it's like a blessing.
So you have to pre-book?
You have to pre-book. So you visit it very safe, COVID safe.
Yeah, that's a good point, because some people would love to come, but they might be worried about COVID considerations. What do you do to keep people safe?
Well, first of all, you have to pre-book. so the sessions are not overbooked, not overcrowded. Then once you come in, you know, it's a chlorinated water in the pool that kills all the bacteria and viruses. And plus, the team here is amazing, and we keep cleaning basically before, after, and you know, during your visit. So basically, it's COVID safe.
Okay. And how many people would you get through on a day like today?
Well, on a day like today, normally we get about 1,300 to 1,400 people.
Wow. Okay. Raf, thank you very much. And just take a look at how busy the pool is. And actually, Raf was telling me that it has got so warm that they had to turn the heating off because the water was just too hot to go swimming in. Let's speak to one of the regulars here, Christine. And Christine, what does it mean having this here near where you live?
This pool has been such a lifeline, especially during lockdown when the indoor pools weren't open, and it was just the outdoor pools where you could come and swim. So really, especially this year, it's really made me appreciate it even more.
And were you always a swimmer, or was it the whole lockdown that got you to take up swimming?
No, so I've always been a swimmer, so that was one of the big difficulties with lockdown when the pools weren't open, but the outdoor pools opened much earlier. So it gave us a few extra weeks of swimming when the indoor pools were closed.
And is it nice seeing it as busy as this, or would you prefer that people didn't quite know and it wasn't quite so crowded?
Well, it's great that lots of people are swimming, but obviously it's annoying when people get in your way.
Yeah, you hate people getting in the way. Christine, thank you very much. Speaking of people getting in the way, Sally, I didn't mention that this is actually the very fast lane. So I think you're about to witness the start of a new Olympic swimming career. Have a great morning.
Should we just let Ben go and do his lap and perhaps enjoy that moment? Hi, morning, gentleman waving at the camera. Keep going, Ben, keep swimming, keep going. My goodness, those lucky people in the water already, very jealous. Now, that is all we have time for this morning. Breakfast will be back tomorrow from 6 o'clock, bright and early. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Goodbye.